2 chairs, 1 low table. No applause to hide behind, just soft lights, a camera's red eye, and a prince who no longer wears a crown. She came with questions and grace. He came with confidence that felt 1 degree too warm. For the first minutes, they traded pleasantries. Then the temperature rose, subtle as steam from a sealed kettle. By the time anyone noticed, it was already whistling. The studio was dressed to look like a living room that read the news. Deep red curtains, a brass lamp on a credenza, a rug whose pattern whispered rather than bragged. 2 modern armchairs faced each other with a glass of water perched on coasters between them. No audience, no laughter track, just the hum of lights and the gentle tick of a distant clock. The kind you only hear when everyone's trying to be polite. Norah O'Donnell arrived first. Posture easy, the practiced calm of someone who has weathered senators and storms. She greeted the crew, checked her notes, and sat with the air of a host who wants a conversation, not a conquest. When the floor manager counted down, she turned to camera with warmth stitched into precision. Good evening. Tonight, a candid conversation with Prince Harry, author, veteran, father. We'll talk about life in America, purpose, and what comes next. She glanced left, inviting him into the frame. Harry, welcome. He entered with a smile that belonged on a magazine cover and a stride that didn't need permission. The casual knit, the open collar, the cultivated unbotheredness. Every detail whispered California. He shook Norah's hand as if the entire exchange were already trending. Good to be here, he said, settling into the chair and crossing an ankle over his knee. Cozy setup, like a lounge where tough questions sip tea. Norah smiled. We like people to feel at home. Oh, I do, he replied, glancing around with amused appraisal. I'm rather good at finding new homes, you might have noticed. The tally light went solid red. Let's start simple, Norah began, her tone warm. How are you finding life in America, away from the institution and all that comes with it? Harry's smile edged toward a smirk. The sun's warmer, the mornings are quieter, and the traffic ignores titles. I quite like that. It's refreshing not to bow to calendars designed a century ago. So no regrets. He toyed with the rim of his water glass. One can miss a building and not miss the locks on the doors. I suppose I miss familiarity. Tradition occasionally has a pleasant scent, but I sleep well. And he tipped his head, letting the line hang. I've discovered you don't need a palace to live like a king. Norah's eyes flickered, courteous but alert. That's a striking phrase. What does living like a king mean to you now? Autonomy, he said. Choosing where I go, who I speak to, which causes deserve a microphone. Crowns are heavy because everyone wants to hang their expectations on them. I'm lighter now. She nodded, letting the answer breathe. You've built a life here, projects, philanthropy, writing. Still, you're a figure people associate with the UK. Do you feel American yet? I feel human, he replied quick. Labels are for shelves. Fair enough, she said with a small smile. Let's talk about visibility. Life here has kept you in the spotlight. Do you ever wish for anonymity? Harry's mouth curved. Anonymity is a lovely fantasy for people who never had to use it. I'm recognizable. That's a fact. But visibility can be harnessed if you're clever. I am the first hairline crack. Norah smoothed her notes with a fingertip. Being clever with visibility can look like control to some. Control is what you call it when someone refuses to be controlled, he countered, still pleasant. She didn't push yet. How's the day-to-day? Coffee runs, school drop-offs, ordinary things. Brilliantly ordinary, he said. I know which barista spells my name right. That's progress. Is there anything you miss from your previous life? She asked. He considered, brief. Ceremonies were grand. There's a charge in history you can't replicate. Sometimes I miss the echo of marble, but not the echo of judgment. Norah folded the thought into a nod. I want to ask gently about family. You've written about grief, about your mother. Does distance from the UK, from the institution, change that grief? The smile thinned. Grief doesn't care about geography. It changes its shoes, that's all. My mother is the voice in the quiet moments. She's the reminder to choose compassion over performance. And your brother? Norah asked, tone careful. People always wonder if time brings healing. Harry's jaw worked once, almost imperceptibly. People always wonder, he echoed. Wondering is free. So are assumptions. My relationships are mine. He took a sip of water. Next question. Norah accepted the boundary with grace and shifted lanes. Your wife is often in the public eye. Some argue the attention fuels the conversation. Others say it distorts it. How do you both navigate that? He leaned back, easy confidence returning. We navigate quite well. We're not tour guides for strangers' expectations. Being in the public eye is a phrase the public enjoys using. It makes them feel invited. They aren't. Is it stressful? She asked, still soft. Everything worth doing is stressful, he said. Ask any pilot in a storm. You keep the nose level and fly your plan. The room held its breath. Norah offered a lighter thread. Your children, without details. How do you think about raising them with so much attention? Harry's expression softened, but the tone stayed high. We raise them to know their names before anyone else tells them who they are. We teach them that kindness outranks titles. A beat. And we make very good pancakes on Sundays. That's the core of civilization. Norah laughed genuinely. That might be the quote of the night. I have a few, he said, a flash of that magazine cover grin. People tend to collect them. She placed one card aside. The conversation had remained civil, but the air had shifted. He was answering from a balcony, not a seat. Let's talk purpose, she said. You've served. You've advocated for mental health, veterans, conservation. What's the mission right now? Impact without permission, he replied. I'm tired of rooms where change needs a chaperone. If I can build something faster out here than in there, I will. Some would say resources and reach came from in there, Norah observed gently. Some would. Be correct, he said, then allowed the edge to show. And some forget the cost attached to those resources. Funny how people tally the gifts and not the invoice. Norah kept her tone even. That's fair. Do you ever feel a pull back? Not to roles, but to reconciliation, grandmother, country, family, tradition. Yes, he said, surprising them both with the speed. I feel a pull to history. I feel a pull to not repeat it. The corner of his mouth lifted. I said I miss marble. I didn't say I miss being a statue. She sat with that, then tried another door, looking ahead. More books, more series, perhaps an expansion of your foundation. People are curious. People are nosy, he said lightly. Curiosity is nosiness with better manners. I'll announce things when they're real, not when someone needs a headline. Do you worry that withholding fuels speculation? I worry that feeding speculation creates addiction, he replied. If I give you crumbs, you'll ask for cake. If I give you cake, you'll ask for the recipe. I'm not a bakery. Norah smiled despite herself. You've got a metaphor for everything. I've had practice, he said. Comes with being turned into a metaphor. The clock ticked again. The crew was perfectly still. Norah's professionalism remained immaculate, but she could feel the altitude of his answers. A thin air superiority that made every landing rough. She tried one more gentle curve. Last one before the break, she said. When you switch off the cameras and walk back into your house, what grounds you? He didn't hesitate. The small things, a toy on the stairs, a dog that refuses to understand royalty, the very American ritual of someone asking, without irony, how my day was. He paused, then let the sting in. And knowing that if I want a crown, there's a paper one in a craft drawer. The real ones never fit. On that note, Norah said, voice steady. We'll take a brief pause. When we return, more with Prince Harry on service, media, and what living like a king really looks like. The tally light died. A makeup artist drifted in and out like a whisper. Harry glanced at the camera lens, as if checking his reflection in it. Norah took a sip of water, then looked at him with the kind of kindness that holds a spine. Thank you, she said softly. You're generous with answers. He smiled, all charm. I'm generous when the questions deserve it. It was polite. It wasn't kind. The next segment would test whether politeness could survive altitude. When the cameras blinked back to red, the air felt different. Harry leaned slightly forward now, elbows on the armrest, one ankle still perched on the opposite knee, casual, confident, and just a touch too self-satisfied. Norah kept her composure, her posture straight, her voice calm. Welcome back, she said smoothly. We're continuing our conversation with Prince Harry, talking about life, purpose, and family. Harry, I'd like to ask, how would you describe this new chapter of your life here in the U.S.? Harry chuckled softly, his tone already carrying that sharp glint of irony. Ah, the new chapter. Yes, the famous phrase everyone uses when they want to avoid saying you've left the castle. Let's just say America's been educational. There's freedom here, an honest kind of air. Though sometimes I wonder if I traded a crown for a circus. Norah's lips curved slightly. That's an interesting way to put it. You seem to have embraced public life here in a different way. He shrugged. It's public life without public duty. The difference is rather refreshing. I wake up when I choose, not when a calendar tells me to wave. Her professional smile didn't falter. You've always spoken about mental health and service. Do you still feel connected to those missions? I feel connected to truth, he replied. Whether that truth is served in a palace or a podcast doesn't really matter. Service doesn't require ceremony. Norah nodded slowly. True, but you've also said that purpose and privilege are connected. Do you ever miss the structure, the sense of duty that came with your royal role? Harry exhaled through a grin that didn't hide the arrogance beneath. Miss it? Sometimes I miss the idea of it, the clean uniforms, the medals, the history. But the reality was bureaucracy in a tuxedo. I serve now in ways that actually change lives, not headlines. Do you ever miss your family? Norah asked softly. For a brief moment, his smile faltered. Family is complicated, isn't it? Mine just happens to come with portraits in museums. That's fair, she said gently. Still, you've spoken about your mother, Princess Diana, many times. Does her memory still guide you? The smirk returned, but it was thinner now. I suppose people expect me to say yes. But my mother doesn't need to guide me. I'm not a child wandering through corridors anymore. I think she'd appreciate that I'm doing things my way, even if the tabloids can't handle it. Norah nodded, her expression steady. And your brother? There's been so much speculation about your relationship with Prince William. Harry sighed theatrically. Ah, yes. The eternal question. Look, Norah, brothers fight. Ours just happens to make front-page news. The media's obsession with reconciliation is exhausting. We'll speak when it makes sense to us, not when the world wants a photo op. That's understandable, Norah said calmly. But do you ever wish things were simpler between you? I wish people stopped wishing things on my behalf, he replied curtly. Simplicity doesn't exist when you're born into spectacle. The tone had sharpened. Norah pressed her lips together, regrouping. Let's talk about Meghan for a moment, she began carefully. She's a public figure in her own right, and many people admire the work you've done together. Others say she's faced an intense level of scrutiny. Harry's laugh cut her off, quick and dismissive. Scrutiny? That's a polite way of saying harassment, isn't it? People love to analyze what they can't understand. My wife has dealt with more nonsense than most politicians. Yet here she is, still standing, still shining. Norah smiled gently. She's certainly a strong presence. Some critics argue she's too visible, too outspoken. And men aren't, he interrupted sharply. Funny how when a woman speaks clearly, she's labeled difficult. My wife's visibility isn't the problem. It's people's fragility around strong women, that is. Norah nodded, keeping her tone neutral. It's a fair point, but do you ever worry that both of you being so public makes privacy difficult? Harry's grin returned, smug this time. We're public on our own terms, Norah. There's a difference between being seen and being sold. I decide what gets shared. That's the modern crown. Control the modern crown. Norah repeated softly. That's quite a phrase, isn't it? He said with satisfaction. You can borrow it if you'd like. I seem to provide good sound bites. Norah let out a polite laugh, but her eyes told a different story, one of quiet endurance. Speaking of privacy, what's life like for your children in California? Harry's tone softened slightly, though the confidence stayed. They're brilliant, curious, innocent enough not to care about any of this nonsense. I want them to grow up believing titles mean nothing and truth means everything. That's admirable, she said. And your career now? You've written books, launched initiatives. What's next? Harry leaned back, crossing his arms. Oh, I've got plans. But unlike most people who talk about them before doing them, I actually execute. I don't need to announce every step to prove I'm relevant. Norah's professionalism cracked just slightly, her tone cooled. That's true, but transparency can help people understand your mission. Transparency is overrated, he replied, his smile sharp as glass. People don't want truth, they want theater. I stopped auditioning. A brief silence hung in the air. Norah set down her note cards, folding her hands carefully. Harry, may I ask something candidly? Always, he said, his tone deceptively charming. Do you realize how you sound sometimes? He blinked, eyebrows lifting. How I sound? Yes, she said gently. You talk about compassion, but your words carry a certain distance. Almost superiority. Harry's smile turned slow and deliberate. Well, when you've lived at the top, everything else is a bit of a step down, isn't it? Isn't it? The air froze. Even Harry seemed to realize the words hung too long, too heavy. Norah kept her tone poised but cool. That's quite a statement, she said softly. He leaned forward, almost daring her. It's an honest one. The tally light turned off again. Time for another break, but no one moved. The The silence lingered, heavy and unspoken. Norah took a quiet breath, her patience holding by a thread. Harry sat back, smiling faintly, as if the tension itself amused him. What had begun as an interview was already cracking into something far more personal, and far more dangerous. The studio was quiet again when the next segment began, but the energy had shifted entirely. Harry looked even more relaxed now, too relaxed. He leaned back in his chair, one arm draped over the side, a faint smile resting on his face like a mask he'd worn too long. Norah, by contrast, sat straighter, her notes untouched. The red tally light blinked on and professionalism reclaimed the stage. "Welcome back," she began evenly. "We're here with Prince Harry discussing life purpose and the weight of legacy." Harry gave a polite nod, eyes fixed on her. "Legacy," he said, tasting the word. "It's funny how people use that term. It's usually code for what will history forgive you for?" Norah smiled lightly. "Perhaps, but I think it's also about how we choose to be remembered." "I'm not concerned with remembrance," he said quickly. "I'm not a statue waiting for pigeons. I'm alive. If I act." The line landed with theatrical flair. Norah hesitated, realizing that every word from him was a performance, sharp, deliberate, and layered in ego. Still, she stayed composed. "Earlier, you mentioned freedom and control," she said gently. "Some critics warned that your search for control has made you more guarded, maybe even more combative, especially with the media. Do you think there's truth in that?" Harry gave a low laugh. "Critics love to psychoanalyze people they'll never meet. It's adorable, really. I'm not combative. I'm just unwilling to be manipulated. There's a difference." "I understand that," Norah said, nodding slightly. "But some might say you've gone from avoiding the spotlight to controlling it entirely." He smiled, that familiar mix of charm and defiance. "Wouldn't you if you could? Everyone wants the microphone. I just happen to own mine." Norah's lips parted, but she caught herself, forcing calm back into her tone. "Harry, you've been incredibly open about your struggles with the press and your mental health journey. Do you ever think your defensiveness could be part of that? Part of protecting yourself, but also part of what alienates people?" His gaze cooled. "You're very good at wrapping accusations in compassion," he said. "It's almost poetic." "I'm not accusing," she replied softly. "I'm observing." Harry gave a faint chuckle. "Right. Observing like a hunter with binoculars." The tension had grown so thick it hummed. "Norah, straight and steady. You mentioned earlier that you live like a king here in America. Do you think that perception, that air of superiority, might be why some people struggle to relate to you now?" His smile faded into something tighter, thinner. "Relate to me? Norah, I'm not an influencer begging for relatability. I don't need to be understood by strangers." She nodded quietly, absorbing the arrogance. "Still, public perception shapes legacy, doesn't it?" He leaned forward, eyes sharp. "I didn't come here to be liked. I came here to be heard. There's a difference. And judging by the way you keep circling the same questions, maybe that difference is lost on you." The words cut, deliberate and cold. Norah held his gaze, her composure beginning to fracture. "I'm not circling," she said evenly. "I'm giving you a chance to be understood in your own words." Harry laughed under his breath. People always say that before twisting those words later. She inhaled through her nose, voice calm but clipped. "Harry, I've interviewed presidents and generals who didn't assume bad faith with every question." "Well, maybe they had less reason to," he shot back. A pause, short but electric. Norah's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. "You know, it's remarkable," she said slowly. "You talk about compassion, fairness, truth, but the way you speak, it doesn't sound like someone interested in connection. It sounds like someone lecturing the world from a mountaintop." Harry blinked, surprised. "Mountaintop?" "Yes," she said quietly. "You speak down, not across." He gave a soft, incredulous laugh. "Or maybe I've just grown tired of pretending everyone's on the same level." That did it. Norah's patience finally cracked, her calm tone sharpening. "You know, Harry, you've spent this entire interview dismissing every question with a smirk. You talk about wanting to be seen for who you are, but you hide behind arrogance every time someone asks something real. You can't keep doing that and expect people to respect you." Harry's face hardened. "Are you finished?" "Not quite," she said, her voice steady now but colder. "You walked in here demanding respect before you even earned it. You treat honesty like an insult and humility like weakness. That's not strength, Harry. That's insecurity." He blinked slowly, the mask slipping. "You sound like my therapist." "Then maybe you should start listening," she shot back. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the faint hum of the studio lights seemed to stop. Harry's jaw clenched, his posture rigid. "You know," he said finally, his voice low and icy, "this interview was supposed to be about my work, not your opinion of my character." Norah didn't flinch. Work and character aren't separated. They never are. He stood abruptly, the chair shifting against the floor with a hollow scrape, the microphone wire tugged against his jacket. "Then I think we're done here." Norah remained seated, looking up at him. "If that's how you choose to end it." "It's not a choice," he said. "It's common sense." He unhooked the microphone, dropped it neatly on the table, and straightened his jacket. "Good luck with your show, Norah. You'll need it." She exhaled softly, unblinking. "And you'll need a little humility." He stopped mid-step, turning slightly, just enough for the cameras to catch the flicker of anger in his eyes. Then he walked out, leaving the set in silence. The red light went dark. The crew froze. Norah leaned back, the echo of his footsteps fading. She rubbed a hand over her temple, exhaling deeply. When she finally turned to the nearest camera, her voice was calm again, measured, professional, unshaken. "Well," she said softly, "sometimes honesty isn't comfortable, but it's still necessary." The screen faded to black. That night, the internet split in two. Half calling her brave, half calling him misunderstood. But everyone agreed on one thing. No one had seen a royal exit quite like this. And that's how it ended. An interview that began with charm and ended in chaos. Prince Harry walked off. Norah O'Donnell held her ground. And the moment went viral within hours. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because we've got more explosive interviews and unforgettable showdowns coming your way.